Hello, my lovely Natsukis. It's your bestie Summer, and as you can see from the time, this is a long one. 5k words for this chapter. Woo! Ignore that. I totally didn't just wake up and decided, hey, why not record this at 10:30 in the morning? Because I'm a homeschooler, woo. But yeah, so fun. But I don't really have a lot to say today. Like, it's just, this chapter is gonna be really fun. It's gonna be super fun. And it's a really long one. So that the last chapter of like Saturday's chapter was like an hour long, and I totally would have put some of that on my other chapter if I knew it was gonna be that long. But hey, y'all got a long chapter, and now y'all are getting another long chapter, so yay. Also, I'm coming up on 100 subscribers, and I am so happy for that. I thank you guys so much for that. That is amazing. I love you all so much. But I'm wondering what I should do as like a 100 subscriber special. Like, do you guys want like a double upload? Do you want like a super long one shot? Do you want like a full chapter of press heart to subscribe or something like that? Like, just let me know. Yeah. I'll also put a community post just in case that like you guys don't hear this. And I'll put it on the next press heart to subscribe video. But with that out of the way, this is part 4, chapter 4 of It's a Reflex, a DC x DC podfic, written by Coffee Loving Hermit and read by Summer Audio. Enjoy! Beginning notes. Because of this huge update, I sectioned it off with dashes, so you can take a pause if you want. It's at 5k words. I legit forgot the word for whiplash, and I knew it, but I was fully prepared to put brain whip instead. You all can thank my mom reminding me of the proper word. I promise that English is something I excel at. You cannot believe how many times I've written Tim as time. It's disappointing, but honestly, at this point, I just use the find feature and hope that muscle memory hasn't failed me too much. Also, I accidentally wrote squirting his eyes instead of squinting his eyes, so you're cursed with that image just as much as I am. Smiley face. Canon, Tim has to deal with a lot of stuff that's not even his problem. Poor kid deserves to have a pep talk. So I threw Vanessa at him. Also, who knew that writing fan fiction is therapeutic? Legitimately, I'm just writing what I wished I heard when I was a kid. Is this a self-healing fic? Should I put self-healing fic, but for the author, as a tag? Should I put in and readers, if this is helping you guys too? I mean, this is to be funny, fic, but Tim grabbed me by the throat and said no. So here I am, writing a bunch of stuff that I never planned on writing. Seriously, I meant for this to be at least like 8k at most. I had to cut this into 2 chapters because I was done like 2/3. I was like 2/3 done. Oh well, that means I can spend more time writing Danny, Duke, and Tim messing around. All according to plan. It's not. Tim and Dick said, let us be brothers, and so I threw them into an enrichment pen, and this is what happened. Tim is totally Dick's favorite brother, but only because Damien is his son. So this whole mess happened, LMAO. I couldn't help it. You'll get more Danny next chapter. Also, sorry for taking so long to update. I meant to have this up within the week, but several whole day stuff happened that needed my immediate attention, and I was too tired to write afterwards. I'm also prioritizing family and friends time. These past few years have been tallied with coffins. See end of chapter for more notes. The growing headache Tim has had for the past 4 hours wasn't fully gone, but drinking his spare cup of coffee on the walk back to WE helped ease it. It didn't help that Tim wasn't sure if the headache was from drinking too much coffee or too little. Everything has started to blend together after pulling 2 all-nighters this week and 3 last week. Stretching his legs does feel good, though. Not to mention it lets Tim have a moment of relative peace. Normally, one of his employees would get Tim his coffee to limit his caffeine intake, but today was filled with board meetings, so Tim wanted to burn off some extra energy from sitting all day. If he just so happened to grab 2 cups of coffee for himself and 1 for his secretary, well, only he and the barista needed to know. Despite how the entire day has been going so far, Tim was overall pretty content with how the workday is going to end. About 5 minutes ago, he had gotten a text from his secretary, Vanessa, that Bruce had come by his office asking when he'd get off. Good thing that he remembered that I wanted to leave with them. I can already tell that he's going into a slump over worrying for Alfred. Seriously, does he think that he's a Tamagotchi or something? I feel like I have to treat him like one with how he acts. He was just about to take a left off of Gal Simone Boulevard and onto Finger Ave when Tim tilted his head back to get the last of his coffee when he saw something that made him pause. Tim had just been turning on the corner when he saw Jason pull up to the driver's side of a car door, specifically Bruce's car. Bruce, who should still be at WE, waiting for Tim to meet up with him. Slowly bringing the empty cup down from his mouth and back into the cup carrier, Tim squinted to analyze the honestly really weird scene. Bruce would have texted me if he planned on leaving without me. Jason isn't willing to talk face-to-face with Bruce all that often, so there's 4 people in the car. The only siblings who came to WE today are Dick, Duke, and Jason. Why is there a 4th person? Deciding that it was quicker to access Jason's motorcycle helmet cam than to text any of the others in the car, Tim stopped walking at the side of the building so that he could shuffle the drink around and grab his phone. Not even bothering to turn up the audio because there's no way Tim's going to risk them talking about their nightlife on blast while standing on a very public sidewalk. Tim sped up the footage to find a clear shot of Mystery Stranger. After getting a car image and sending it to his personal Face ID program, he stared at the face of his newfound stalking victim. A Caucasian male who looks like Wayne adoption bait, who also looks younger than Tim by a few years. He decided to watch the Mystery Stranger while the ID program is running, so he put his phone into his trouser pocket to lower the risk of it being stolen. It may be early evening, but this is still Gotham. Observing how they all interacted with Mystery Stranger put Tim on edge. It was like they've accepted him into the family. Squinting his eyes at the scene, he grabbed his other cup of coffee from the cup carrier and started drinking from it. No sense in letting it cool down and waste it. Hopefully Vanessa won't mind a lukewarm coffee. Hopefully I can just put the blame on Bruce for leaving without me. After a minute or so had passed, the notification that the program finished sounded. Keeping an eye on Bruce's car, Tim fished out his phone and opened up the app. Daniel James Fenton, a 14-year-old from Amity Park, Illinois. A bit far from home, aren't you? The intersection lights turned green, so Jason and then Bruce drove off. Staring down Finger Ave, Tim decided to send the image he pulled from Jason's civilian helmet to Dick with a question mark attached. The man responded pretty quickly, but with an unforgivable amount of spelling errors and with none of the emojis that Dick usually added. Dick around and find out. He's Brutterger. His name Danny. Dick around and find out. Did Bruce Nutter tell you about him? Either hurt? Dick around and find out. What are you stalking us, Gain? Dig around and find out. Timmers, we've talked about this. Dig around and find out. I knew you're seeing this. The e-seeps are on. Dig around and find out. Tim? Dig around and find out. Dookie Bear agrees with me on the stalking thing. Dig around and find out. We're planning an intervention RN. Dig around and find out. At least Red Pond if you're going to Luriugs. I.K. Dig around and find out. Lurk. Dig around and find out. Surrey Brice stopped randomly. Well then, Tim says blissfully. Here and I thought that they'd be able to notice that Danny's not adopted. They haven't noticed he's not adopted? Are they stupid? He stiffened. I need to stop spending so much time on forums. Shaking his head, Tim kicked off the building, put his phone back into his pocket, and started speed walking the 4 blocks to WE. There was a semi-full recycling bin along the way, so Tim tossed away the evidence of his coffee addiction. Vanessa only needed to know about the 1 cup of coffee. No crime should be covered up sloppily. A headache is no excuse. About 10 minutes later, Tim made it back to the building, and he went straight to the higher-level elevators. Another person also got on, but they luckily saw that Tim was in no mood to talk, and wisely took a step back and silently stood in a corner. Watching the numbers climb up wasn't fast enough for Tim, so he started tapping his foot to help get rid of the extra nerves. The elevator stopped 3 floors below his office, and the other person on the board quietly said, "Excuse me, sir." Tim automatically moved out of the way, then jabbed his floor's button again after the man practically shot out of the elevator. I'm not going to be stuck in elevator ping pong. There's more important stuff I need to deal with. Why couldn't this just be a normal vigilante family? He huffed at that thought. Normal families aren't vigilantes. That's just a pipe dream. This is your life, Tim. Once the door opened, Tim practically ran out of the door and up to Vanessa's desk. Hey, Vanessa, sorry about being a little late, but you wouldn't believe what I saw. She raised an eyebrow as she also took the coffee that was handed to her. Also, your coffee might be a bit cold. Sorry about that. This is pretty important, though. She sipped at her definitely lukewarm coffee, judging by the silent grimace on her face. Sir, what could have been so important that it took you over half an hour to come back from the cafe that's only 10 minutes away? I know the line at this time of day is short. It would be a sad day indeed if I had to tell your handsome brother that you were using my goodwill to drink more coffee than you're allowed. Tim gagged at the idea of his secretary hooking up with Dick. It doesn't matter that those two are around the same age. Vanessa reminded him of a cousin, and that was overly professional. But still, they helped him through his troubles. He could only hope that she didn't pick up that he saw her like a cousin. No need to put her into the Wayne family shenanigans. The only thing that helped was that he knew for a fact that Dick has a very specific type. Red hair and could pick him up as if he weighed like a couple of grapes. Jason and Tim like to hang out by swapping Dick's pinning stories about their older brother's crushes while watching old reality TV shows. Vanessa, however, is a through-and-through office woman with plenty of professional snark who isn't afraid to put Tim aside and talk one-on-one. Not the loud, pushy, and vibrant personality that Dick prefers. That's way too much analyzing of my big brother's preference. Stop thinking about his love life. Stop thinking about his love life. Stop thinking about his love life. Stop thinking. You're not his type. They both stilled. She rose both eyes at him before setting the coffee down, looking bemused. Tim's shoulders went to his ears as his face flushed. Wait, no, it's just that I didn't mean to say it like that. Dick just has a very specific type, and for years he's made it very well known what his type is. Let me go grab my stuff and we can leave the office. Then I'll tell you about what I saw on the way back. Vanessa chuckled. Ah, you want to have an off-the-clock gossip. That'll make up for the lukewarm coffee, at least. She pointed at him with her cup of coffee. Do you want me to call the valet to bring around your car? Tim nodded, then he very gracefully scrambled to his office door and went inside. Leaning on the door, Tim started breathing, exercising to calm down. Once he had steadier breathing, he walked over to his desk to put down his cup, and the carrier was still in. Tim stared at the cup carrier in disbelief and a vague sense of mortification. Did I seriously just say that? To her face? Would it be weird if I gave her a 4-day weekend? Wait, she'll probably think that I'm trying to make her quit if I do that. What about a 4-day weekend and a pay raise? No, then my other secretary would probably feel snubbed after learning that he didn't get a pay raise as well. He works just as well as she does, after all, and it's hard to find competent secretaries. Fuck it, they're both getting a pay raise, but only Vanessa's getting the 4-day weekend. Shaking his head, Tim sighed, then began to stuff his laptop into his bag. Then he paused. I could look more into Danny Fenton while I'm here. The network and proxy is secure enough for a basic background in cyber stalking. Tim snorted as he took the computer back out and turned it on. Wow, looks like Dick got to me with that stupid wording. Stalking. He shook his head. As if I'm only checking to make sure that this is Danny isn't a threat. His hand hit against the cup carrier, so he grabbed it to hurl it into the trash can that was next to his office door. It landed, but it didn't bring any satisfaction to Tim, just throwing at the trash can, then shook his head and got to work. Inputting the information into the background and social media scours that the ID program gave was, as always, quick and easy. So while he waited for it to finish its job, Tim got up and opened the office door before he talked Vanessa out of it. Vanessa looked at him when he walked over to her desk again, and she smiled at Tim. Yeah? Did you get all of your items all ready to leave for the day? She pointedly ignored the fact that Tim wasn't carrying his computer bag. Tim cleared his throat. Actually, I forgot to do a quick task, so I won't be leaving just yet. It's automated though, so it'll just tell you what I saw. So I'll just tell you what I saw now instead of later. Tim sat on one of the waiting chairs across from her desk. So, this morning, I asked Bruce if I could get a ride with him since my brothers were supposed to come in today, right? Vanessa nodded and motioned for him to continue. I got your text that he came up here just as I went into the cafe, but not even 5 minutes later, when I was walking back, I saw his car. His fingers were tapping against the armrest, so he stilled them, taking more breaths to ground himself. He forced his body to relax. You're a big sister, aren't you? Vanessa's face softened as she nodded. Yes, I'm the oldest of 3, though my family likes to joke that I'm the oldest of 4. Tim looked at her confusedly, but decided that unless she was going to tell him outright, then he didn't need to know. Workplace boundaries and all. Right, he drew out. Well, were you ever frustrated when your parents forgot about you? Bruce isn't actually really my dad, but he's still something similar to that.
even then, it feels like I'm replaceable. That I could be thrown away and forgotten because I don't fit in with everyone else. I don't even know why I'm talking about this to you. Maybe I just want an outsider's opinion. You don't have to answer if you don't want. Dealing with my parent issues isn't a part of your job description after all. He tapped his fingers against his knee while carefully looking anywhere but at Vanessa. She snorted, but stood up from her desk to sit in a chair next to Tim. Tim, it's perfectly fine to feel like that. Have you talked to Mr. Wayne on your brothers about them leaving you behind? Tim shook his head. Then you don't know the whole story. Nothing is set in stone about the unknown until you etch it. That's what my Grammy always said when kid me encountered something new and scary. Being compared to a kid rankled at him, even though it did help calm down the worries that were running around in his head. Your grandmother sounds like she was a wise person. Thanks for helping out. He smiled at her and moved to stand up, but a hand on his wrist stopped him. Sir, Tim, we're all human. My granny also told me that a part of being human is to make mistakes. So, whatever reason led to Mr. Wayne and your brothers leaving without you, I'm sure that it was just an honest mistake. You're not replaceable. Vanessa gently squeezed his wrist. I've seen how your family looks at you, and it's full of love. Being a family isn't always going to be happy moments, but what makes a family is how they look after each other during hard times. Family is something you fight for, so assuming the worst of them from what could have been an honest mistake will only ever hurt everyone involved. At that, Vanessa patted the back of his hand and walked back to her desk. Hearing all of that was shocking. Talking in this family? Unthinkable. However, it would be a nice change of pace, though. Tim definitely ignored the warm feeling in his chest at the fact that his family loved him, to the point that it was noticed by even his secretary. He was secretly reveling in that lovely feeling. Standing up, he nodded at Vanessa, who gently smiled back and walked back into his office. Tim plopped into his chair, then blankly stared at his computer screen for a moment. Right, yeah, the program. Tim found himself staring at the photo of Danny Fenton, the kid who won't be replacing me. Examining Danny's information, a recent school district announcement caught Tim's attention. They had a district-wide contest to visit a major city, and they chose Gotham of all places? That's concerning. Sending a whole bunch of unprepared freshmen to this city, should Bruce Wayne get in contact with their school board? Looks like it was protested by the parents, too. How'd they get the parents to let their kids go? How interesting. An undisclosed large donation to be made towards the reparations to the city infrastructure of the majority of the kids went to Gotham? He hummed while thinking about why someone would want to bend the wills of parents to such an extent. Now, why would the school district do something like this to this extent? Who is willing to spend so much money on a random town? Is Danny a plant to get dirt on the Waynes? Could he have banked on the public personas of my family to trick them? No, that wouldn't explain why Dick said he's a new brother over a secure line. A cold feeling of dread came up. Are they under the Theros of magic? That could explain why they think he's a newly adopted. But why send Danny of all kids? Surely it would have been easier if they picked from some of the many homeless children here in Gotham instead of wasting a whole bunch of money on a city states away. Does Danny have some ties to the mastermind then? Is he an unwilling participant or fully complicit? Tim scrolled back to the top of the page to narrow his eyes at Danny's photo. Knocking on his office doors brought him out into his thoughts, so Tim called out, "Yes, you may enter." Vanessa peeked her head into the room, back to her office professionalism. "Sir, the valet has informed me that the car has been brought out front. Do you want me to tell him to wait, or that you'll be down shortly?" Tim looked back at his computer screen, then contemplated for a moment. Decision made, he looked up at Vanessa and replied, "I'll be heading down. The task I'm working on can be finished at the manor." She nodded and left the door open as she informed the valet. Meanwhile, Tim put away his laptop, grabbing his computer bag, and threw away his empty cup, then closed and locked his office. Tim and Vanessa made eye contact. "I would like to say thank you for helping me out even though you didn't have to." She smiled at him and waved him towards the elevator, which had already been called up. Vanessa really is good at what she does. She's definitely getting that raise. "You don't have to thank me for stuff like that." Vanessa started putting her items into her own bag. "You can go ahead and leave first. I have some after-work plans with some friends who will be here in a bit to pick me up. Have a good evening, sir." Tim said goodbye to her and entered the elevator. Exhaustion dragged down Tim's shoulders, so he leaned against the wall for extra support. He stared forlornly at the floor. There goes my plans to actually sleep for once. Why does stuff like this always happen at the worst time? At least it's before the worst of the rush hour. Hopefully I'll be able to get home without anything else popping up. The elevator opened up to the first floor, and mustering up the energy to detach himself from the elevator wall took longer than he would admit. Blarily making his way out the door and around a large group of kids, Tim started to walk out of the building. However tired he may have been, though the whispers were still heard. "Hey, that guy over there looks way too young to work here, doesn't he?" a girl said. "Isn't the elevator he came out of the VIPs for something?" a different girl questioned. Tim steadfastly ignored them and finally walked out of the building by the time the teens began to realize who he is. If I have to talk to more than I need to right now, I will scream. This is why I hate being such a public figure. I don't know how Bruce and Dick can deal with all of this. The valet saw Tim approaching, so he opened the car door for Tim. In response, Tim tiredly smiled at the man and nodded his thanks. "There have been news of Craig Bridge being closed off due to a sighting of Mothman, sir. Have a good day and drive safely, sir." Once Tim sat in the driver's seat, the valet closed the door, bowed slightly, then walked back to his station. "First I get left behind, now I have to take the long way back to the manor." Frustration made it hard for Tim to not start yelling. Instead, he took a few slow and deep breaths to once again collect himself. With the worst of his anger subdued for now, Tim started up the car and drove out into traffic. That explains why Bruce and Jason were going down Finger instead of Infantino. This day really has it out for me, doesn't it? The noise of the city came from outside. The car helped to relax Tim. Hearing the muffled sounds of the city reminded Tim of the nights when he would go out to photograph Gotham at night and its protectors. A few blocks down, he saw the street where his go-to cafe was on. There was only a slight deliberation before the decision was made to get another cup of coffee. Going in and getting another cup was quick, and Tim spent most of that time looking more into Danny. Taking a long drink from the coffee as Tim walked back to his car helped to concentrate his thoughts on the weird things that happened this week. Just as he entered his car, Tim remembered to start up another program to pull up all of the footage from WE that Danny appeared in. No time to look through all of Gotham's cameras for who knows how long he's actually been here. Just WE will have to do for now. Satisfied that he didn't forget anything else, Tim started the car back up and drove out of the parking lot. Getting back into traffic was easy, and it seemed that there was one thing going well for Tim because the traffic was light, suspiciously light. Tim frowned while doing mental calculations on how likely it was that he's driving on an almost empty main street during rush hour that led to one of the main bridges in Gotham. Already, he was almost at the interchange in front of the Dina Bridge. Ah, that's right, Craig Bridge. The people not wanting to test Gotham's luck when it comes to cryptids like Mothman is a plausible reason for the late traffic. The reason of the drive passed by quickly as Tim took a page out of Jason's book. Tim couldn't help but smirk at the thought of Bruce's face after finding out his son stole his credit card after they were used to pay for speeding tickets. You wouldn't have to pay for speeding tickets if you didn't forget me, Bruce. Crossing over Dina Bridge was a quiet affair, as well as turning onto the highway that led to Bristol. What wasn't quiet was the car after Tim brought up his cup of coffee, only to find out that he drank it all. Cursing at himself for getting so lost in his thoughts that he didn't even keep track of something small like that, Tim debated if he should make another stop to get more coffee. No more coffee until the Danny situation is figured out. I can get more after I know for sure that nothing bad is going to immediately happen. Pulling into the Manor's garage was a relief, but the walk to the Manor brought back the exhaustion from earlier with a vengeance. Opening up the unlocked front door just made Tim die a little inside. Please let it be a freak occurrence and not a magical mind control thing. Softly closing it, Tim made up his mind to make himself coffee before tracking down his idiotic and stupid brothers and dealing with whatever mess they got themselves into this time. Magic is so annoying. I'm not going to be dealing with magic without drinking more coffee. Mind made up, he began walking to the kitchen when he heard Duke saying, "Wait, weren't we all waiting at the front entrance for Tim to get off of work so that he could ride with us?" Seems like it's not mind control then, though it could also just be wearing off. We were? I thought Tim said he was driving himself back and when we left him this morning. Tim also heard Dick and felt his prior frustration and anger come back. Oh, that dickhead. Now he should hope it's mind control thing, or else. Tim kept a neutral expression as he stood in the kitchen doorway and took in the banes of his existence and tried not to cry. Danny was already looking at him, so Tim took a cursory glance before focusing on Dick. The dick? Yeah, you guys were supposed to. Imagine my surprise when I saw all of you guys driving off without me. There was no pity felt for his 3 idiotic brothers. Seriously, a maybe civilian, maybe victim, maybe criminal noticed me first? Jason at least apologized, which Tim appreciated, but Dick and Duke stayed silent and just looked guilty as they both sent him puppy eyes, which he ignored. Tim sat facing Danny in the chair next to him and propped himself up on his hand. No coffee, no nap. Might as well enjoy the puzzle before I tear those idiots a new one. I'll even sick Alfred on them when he gets back. Those assholes deserve no mercy. Taking a closer look, the kid didn't amount to anything, as he didn't find anything that gave away him as suspicious. Danny was an average-looking teen who was a bit on the skinny side, wearing business casual clothes that weren't fitted to him, that he seemed uncomfortable wearing. New or never worn clothes based on the lack of wear and tie. He reminds me of when Jason first came into the Wayne family. Must be from a lower social caste, but those clothes are on the higher scale of cost. Borrowing the clothes doesn't seem right. They look freshly bought. Tim's time to observe without raising eyebrows ran out, so he responded to Jason. You're good. It's more funny with a hint of annoying than anything else. Well, funny to me at least. So, what were you all talking about before I came in after driving myself over here? Ignoring Jason always brought joy to Tim because it made Jason get more and more pissed. The man reminded Tim of Elmo being angry whenever he got pissy. Tim also couldn't help but put Dick under the spotlight because now there's no way at this point that he doesn't know that Tim's mad and out for blood. Smirking at Dick's discomfort brought him joy. We were talking about the others. Danny hasn't met them yet, and I thought it was fair warning to tell him about them all beforehand. I just told him about you and Damie. Definitely not mind control then. If it had worn off, then they wouldn't be acting so calm about this. Looking back at Danny, he waited for the teen to do something more than stare at him. Seeing that he wasn't, Tim introduced himself. Right. My name is Tim. I've already been told that your name is Danny. Owain he may be now, but he was still raised as a Drake. Drakes have manners, even to those who don't deserve it, so Tim rose a hand for a handshake. A Drake is also petty. Although I'm sure you'll be fine meeting everyone else, won't you? The other boy nodded. A sense of satisfaction filled Tim at having caught out the intruder that's manipulated his brother so well. Probably, yeah. I've met a lot of people with big personalities that like to pull pranks, so to speak. Tim hid his frown by standing up and stretching. Looks more and more like the forced participant plot theory. Still doesn't excuse my brothers and Bruce for not noticing that something's wrong with this picture, though. Yeah, I'm definitely telling Alfred about this. Quickly thinking up a plan to subtly probe for answers, Tim walked over to the doorway. So, Danny, can you go with me to somewhere more private? I want to know where you fall in with all this. He could see Duke about to ruin his plan, so Tim cut him off. I won't do anything untoward to him. Just a few questions on how he came to the manor is all. Tim saw Danny look towards Dick, so he turned around and started walking down the hallway to a spare office. The office was on this floor and wing, but it was in the wrong hallway, so they had to go to the main hall. Walking down the correct hallway, Tim quickly thought up a line of questions to interrogate Danny with. Tim opened the door and let Danny go in first so that he could close it and lock it. He could be a flight risk. No need to risk losing him in a chase when the chase never happened. Seeing that Danny was just standing awkwardly, Tim gave him an out to sit on a chair. Then they talked. That entire conversation left him feeling less sure about Danny's mental health, but Tim is planning on strangling his probably kidnapping complacent family members for making him deal with this. Tim had already left the room and was just waiting on the two to get a move on. He just made an order for a USB mini and a plug-in for Danny and his stupid phone. Deciding the risk was worth it, he checked up on the camera program and saw that it was finished. All he needed to do now was just find the time and space to watch it. Both of them chatted about the girls as they walked back to the kitchen. Luckily, they ignored Tim, so he was able to retreat everything in relative peace. Is this really just a freak accident? A breathy chuckle escaped, but it luckily wasn't noticed by the two ahead of him. Why can't there be a month without anything happening? Danny certainly wasn't moving like he was injured, and there was also no indication of any drugs being used to hide pain, so he's more than likely uninjured then. He also doesn't seem like someone who's been forced to do something, so that's a killing blow on his theory. None of the usual mind control magic tells popped up on the whole time Tim was scrutinizing Danny. His brothers also weren't giving off any tells, and Tim has yet to be affected by magic, so officially it was off the table. The phone also didn't give anything away, and Danny's pockets didn't have an outline of a phone. Danny's backpack also looked like it was only holding a weird-looking thermos, notebook, and a pencil, so it was close to nil that this was a ploy to get dirt on the ever-stainless Wayne family, leaving the most likely and arguably the worst reason for Danny being here. He totally got kidnapped. Oh my god, my family totally kidnapped a random kid off of the street. They even know that this is a kidnapping. What is wrong with everyone? No, Tim, you know better than to jump to conclusions. Bruce always says, don't fully believe something until you have evidence to state otherwise. For a reason. There's still a chance that this is a scheme and not a kidnapping. An accidental kidnapping? The group went inside the kitchen, and Tim definitely did not collapse onto the counter's chair, then lay his head and arms on said counter. Should I tell someone else my theories? Nothing bad is happening, though, so it's not going to be an issue if I waited a while. Tim let out a surprised, huh? Then appraised the two other teens that were currently getting some of the food that Jason left on the counter. What if I didn't tell anyone? Let them squirm in fear as they realize their mistake. Kidnapping or not, they totally let this random kid in here without screening him. This can also teach Danny to not get into cars with people that he doesn't know. For some reason, I doubt that he'll learn from this incident, though. A plate appeared in front of him, so he looked up and saw Duke frowning at him. You should take a nap after eating, Tim. I know that you've been sleeping even less than even Bruce. Pulling himself off the counter, he slowly began to eat. A few bits later, Tim looked to see what he was eating. Some type of stir-fry? Is it stir-fry? Blinking at his food, Tim became aware of just how tired he is. With a sigh, Tim laid his head down on his arm and started eating sideways. After a while, Tim spent more time blinking than eating when something warm and heavy was laid on top of him that also covered his eyes. Slowly, he fell asleep to the sound of talking. Shrill beeping and cursing jolted Tim awake. Snapping his head to look towards where the bomb was, he saw Dick opening the microwave and taking out food. Ignoring whoever was talking, he blearily looked at the stove's clock, and he saw that it was 6:13 p.m. Only 10 minutes had passed since he fell asleep. Rubbing at his eyes, he turned back to the conversation. Shouldn't have distracted me, Dick called out to someone. His dearest oldest brother saw that Tim was looking at him, so Dick spoke to him instead. Sorry about that, Timmers. I didn't mean to wake you up. Do you think you can go back to sleep? He certainly looked apologetic, but Tim had been enjoying his catnap. Besides, after that adrenaline shot, there was no chance of falling back asleep. Tim was forcibly woken up, so he forcibly chose violence. Back from playing zookeeper already? Tim snarled towards Dick, because he was being a dick. Looking around the room, he saw that Duke and Danny were sitting next to each other on the other seated area, and both were paying attention to a notebook. Yeah, Danny was nice and prepared all of the food for me, so all I had to do was just serve it to his pets. Dick shrugged and started digging into his food while leaning against the counter where the microwave was at. He made the smart decision to stay away from Tim. Just because he's too far to hurt physically doesn't mean I can't verbally disembowel him. Didn't the demon brat do that because of your abysmal cooking skills? No love in the game of revenge. Dick the Dick. Dick. He's small enough to be one. Dick shrunk into himself and grimaced. Ouch, Timmers. You're really going for the throat today, aren't you? Maybe you should have thought about that before forgetting about me and leaving me behind, Tim said dryly. He looked down at his now undoubtedly cold food, then shrugged and started eating it again. If you make me a cup of coffee, if your specially made coffee, I'll forgive you for waking me up.
After that, Tim zoned back out and only stayed awake enough to eat his cold, maybe stir-fry, and drink the coffee which had appeared at some point that never ran out. By the time that his food ran out, Tim felt more like a human and less like the physical embodiment of fratricide. Hearing the sound of talking brought him all the way from his sleep-deprived brain fog. "Do you really not want me there, Duke?" Said Teen shook his head as he kept typing on his phone. "Is this going to be a plausible deniability thing? I feel like it is. Is this a targeted attack? I'm feeling so attacked right now. I can keep a secret and cover stuff up." Tim replied for Duke. "No, it's because you're old." He couldn't help it. Dick needed to know. "You haven't been relevant in years." Dick's face and squeaky toy impression will always be remembered fondly, if it also helps that there's a security camera in the room. Leaving Duke and Danny to die laughing and ignoring Dick's floundering, he used his phone to pull up the camera's footage. After clipping and editing it to only show himself and Dick, Tim sent it to the Batkid chat without any context. 2 phones went off. Duke ended up laughing harder as he saw that Tim had sent a video, and Dick hung his head in his hands and dramatically wept over his uncoolness. "I'm a petty bitch. They should have known better than to forget about me while standing in my building." Danny leaned over Duke's shoulder as his brother played the video. The phone blared a slightly tiny, "No, it's because you're old. You haven't been relevant in years." Along with Dick's squeaks came from the phone. The two started laughing at Dick again, who just sputtered. The man did a large inhale, then slapped his hands against the counter he was next to. "Well, since I'm old, that just means I can fight for Danny's custody. Oh, I know," Dick shouted as he smiled brightly at Danny. "We could do what I and B did. You could be my ward if you want." At that, Danny stopped laughing and looked at Dick suspiciously, which then shifted to a thoughtful expression. Danny tilted his head as he kept staring at Dick. "Oh, really? Even if you had to square up with a billionaire?" Danny said with amusement. Tim could only watch in shock at the change of events and what it meant to his theories. "What the fuck? What the actual fuck? Please tell me that I wasn't wrong about this. Was it Bruce that is going to make the payment to the city council? Bruce is totally the type to make up some random tests like this to give me. Hey, Tim, try and figure out if I'm going to adopt this kid or not. It'll be detrimental if you get a new brother. Have fun." If he is actually trying to adopt Danny, I'm going to drown myself in a bathtub full of this really expensive coffee just to spite him. On the off chance that Danny's not talking about Bruce, then I'm just going to not deal with it at all. All of the kidnappers in this family can deal with it. They're the ones who got us into this mess. Dick puffed out his chest and began to walk over to sit next to Danny, so Duke stood up after patting Danny on the back. The teen walked over to Tim to sit with him instead. "You'd be surprised about the amount of billionaires I've fought. This is a battle that I won't lose, if this is one that you'd let me fight." The man spoke quietly and softly, then held out his hand to Danny, who took it. The kid looked guilty as he looked away, even though he didn't let go of Dick's hand. "Now I kind of feel bad. I thought that you were joking about getting custody of me." Danny's free hand went up to rub the back of his neck. "You strike me as a good kid. That means old emotional constipated billionaire doesn't deserve you." Dick smiled softly at the kid. "Okay, this should solve the problem, probably kidnapping things. There's no document of Bruce trying to adopt a random teen from a random state, so Danny should know something's up by now. Please, I don't need another brother." Danny looked back at Dick and smiled with him.
Thanks. Most people keep saying that I should be proud that he favors me, but honestly, I don't like him. No one listens to me, so thanks for listening to what I want. Tim's jaw dropped. No way, this is actually happening. I refuse to get another brother. There is too many of them. Dick reached over and pulled Danny into a one-armed hug. Aw, kiddo, what you want should always come first when it's about who should be taking care of you. I'm sorry that everyone keeps saying that to you. I think if worst comes to worst, would you be willing to? I don't vibe well with the billionaires with weird basements. Tim stared at his empty plate, gobsmacked at the info he's learning. What the fuck? What the actual fuck? Please tell me I was wrong about this. What are the chances that Danny's talking about a totally different, emotionally constipated billionaire who wants to adopt him that has a weird basement? A weird basement! Tim snapped his head to look at the teen sitting next to him in shock, and Duke startled at the sudden movement but stared back at him. Tim mouthed, "You told Danny about the cave?" Duke shook his head and shrugged. He mouthed back, "He said he didn't want to join our volunteer thing, so I didn't push to see how much he knew." Right, the volunteer thing. Was Danny talking about them being tour guides? Does he actually believe that we all volunteered for it? Running some quick calculations in his head for the billionaire part didn't help his confusion because the number wasn't 0. Deciding that he was just done with this, Tim stood up and put his dish away. When he passed Duke, he muttered, "I'll be in the same office as before if you need me." Now was just as good as a time as any to see if Danny left any hairs behind for a DNA test, as well as watch the security feeds of Danny at WE, then dig further into whomever strong-armed an entire city into sending their kids to Gotham with money. That'll be used to repair the city. First things first. Finding a hair from Danny. Shaking his head, Tim once again opened the door, then began to search the chairs that Danny sat in for any visible DNA samples. There wasn't any, but Tim didn't have much hope for finding one to begin with. Guess I'll be getting that sample the old-fashioned way. With that, he went to sit at the desk, properly this time. Second things second. The footage at WE. Pulling up the footage on his phone, Tim linked it to that computer and sent it over. Video ready to play, Tim started at. He saw past Danny walking up to the building with a giant group of kids during early afternoon, the same group from when Tim was leaving the building that evening. Watching past Danny walk over and wander the halls at WE for some time gave him a sense of vindication, though. He couldn't help but smirk that the veritable maze building into WE to confuse intruders worked on his latest and biggest annoyance. Speeding up 20 minutes of footage later, it seemed that past Danny found his destination. Muttering into his hands a low, "The Aerospace Division headquarters?" Tim continued to watch the sped-up footage. Past Danny stayed there for hours, just talking to the same group. He followed past Danny all the way to the main lobby before Tim set the footage back to normal speed. The next several minutes were spent in silence as Tim watched his family interact with Danny, all the way until Bruce pulled away from WE and out of sight into the cameras. Tim kept staring at the screen. The screen stared back, the replay button mocking him. Fuck! Tim brought his hand up to his face and screamed some more into them. Then he laughed until he was dry sobbing. Bringing his hands down, Tim looked back at the screen, but it didn't change. Closing his eyes, Tim began a breathing exercise to calm down from the hard evidence that no, Danny is in fact not doing anything criminal. Tim's family, on the other hand, did and currently still is doing a criminal act. Then he decided that this isn't his problem, because he wasn't the one that made it a problem in the first place. This doesn't explain the donation, though. Just because this incident doesn't involve Danny being a criminal doesn't mean that he still isn't a victim to another one that I'm unaware of. Mind made up, Tim zeroed back into the computer and went to work. Don't look for zebras when the answer might be an okapi. Big to small, then throw the thinking box into the fire. He brought up Danny's document history and looked through everyone who has lots of money that's affiliated with him. 2 people fit the bill. Samantha Manson, Danny's long-term friend, and one Vladimir Masters, the boy's godfather. Frowning as he tapped a finger on the mouse, Tim went through all of the times he met the 2 of them. Sam doesn't seem the type to force others into possible harm just for renovating money. She's more likely to just donate it or start up a nonprofit and do it herself. Mr. Masters also doesn't seem like the type, but I've only ever met him during business summits and conferences. A thorough businessman that I wouldn't be surprised has the same amount of shady practices as Cadmus does. Unease filled Tim as he thought about what Danny said earlier. So, no one listens to a kid when a man with money and power takes interest in him, tells him that he should feel lucky for his attention. The computer mouse started creaking, but Tim couldn't find himself to care. More rage came at an unsettling thought. Danny would prefer a stranger that he's known for 2 hours than the person his parents approved as his emergency guardian. What are his parents doing? Are they blind or something? Because there's no way they haven't noticed. That kid sure makes it hard for me to think level-headedly. Tim sighed and let the anger go away. Letting emotions cloud your judgment does not go good on a case after all. Just as he started to dig up everything related to Mr. Masters, his phone dinged. He grabbed his phone to see what the notification is about. Raising an eyebrow, Tim unlocked his phone to read Duke's text. Lamp Brother. So, I was planning on only doing this with Danny. Lamp Brother. But you Lamp Brother. Look like you're at the end of your rope or something, so I'm inviting you instead. Lamp Brother. Wanna go cryptid hunting with Danny and I? Lamp Brother. We're planning on leaving in 2 hours if you want to take a nap. Is this about the Mothman sighting on Craig? Only you can start a fire. Lamp Brother. Yeah, you going? Consider this payment for forgetting me. Only you can start a fire. Lamp Brother. Nice. Still telling Alfred, though. Only you can start a fire. Lamp Brother. Not nice. With a snort, Tim looked back at the computer screen. Given the tour's schedule, Tim has another week to get to the bottom of this. Heavily sighing, he saved his progress, then logged off of the computer. Rubbing at his eyes, Tim got up and walked over to the door with an intention of taking a nap on his bed until it was time to leave. However, that plan was taken out back and killed when he opened up the door to see Dick standing on the other side. Tim stared at his brother because shouldn't he be playing family with Danny right now? Dick's face changed as he looked like he just swallowed a lemon. I'm not playing family with Danny, Tim. He might be a new brother, but you're still my baby bird. I'll always be here for you, Tim. Oh, I said that out loud. That's not good. Dick started speaking again. I wanted to check up on how you were doing. When I woke you up earlier, I felt terrible. Not to mention, I don't think that you took my apology seriously. Tim was just as confused at this. You do know that Danny isn't adopted, right? Besides, you gave me coffee when I asked for it, so I already forgave you for waking me up. Dick just smirked at him, which was the reason why I offered to care for Danny instead of B. Dick ruffled his hair, then smiled softly. So I was beaten black and blue by your words for no good reason? Tim groaned and leaned against the doorframe. Though I do feel better that you accepted my apology. I thought that maybe we could talk a little. That wasn't the only thing I wanted to apologize for, Timmers. He met Dick's steady gaze before relenting and moving aside to let his brother in. Might as well. The two of them sat in the armchair in front of the desk, which they had moved to face each other. So tell me, oh dear brother of mine, what else do you wish to apologize for? Dick looked sad and pensive for a moment before he covered it up with a small smile. Oh, generous baby bird, I wish to apologize for forgetting someone very important to me earlier today. I had made the foolish mistake of not paying attention to what that very important person's plans were during breakfast this morning. At the end of it, Dick had his hand clasped together as if he was praying while tearing up. Tim couldn't help but laugh at this overly dramatic older brother. That doesn't mean that Tim also can't be an overly dramatic younger brother. Poor lost soul. It seems that your very important person still feels miffed at the sins you have committed against him. What shall you do to repent? Dick broke with a small laugh before getting back into his act, but Tim very bravely stayed in character. I shall offer my share of our marvelous grandpapa's cookies for 1 month, complete one given chore of his for 2 months, and lend my coffee-making abilities once a day for 3 months. Both of them fighting to keep a straight face. On top of that, I shall also let that very specific person pick a day per month for the rest of the year on which he can choose what we will do. Will those be enough to repent, O generous baby bird? Hearing Dick say all of that made Tim ecstatic. He drives a hard bargain, but with redemption comes punishment. So he smirks crookedly at Dick, who suddenly looked very unsure of the situation. Poor soul, your very important person appears to be pleased with the offerings. However, to learn from your mistake, there shall be a punishment. That punishment shall be explaining that the marvelous grandfather what has happened today and the following days for as long as the incident is happening. He was trying very hard not to cackle like a madman when he saw Dick's face pale. Oh, poor Dickie, you don't know the true scale of what I'm asking for. Your sacrifice shall be remembered. That is a steep punishment indeed. It's so steep it's a 360-degree angle. However, if that is what it takes, then it is a welcome one. Dick said, as if he wasn't ready to back out of the deal at just the thought of explaining to Alfred why he left him behind. Tim, meanwhile, was grinning like a cat that caught the robin. Your sentimentality is your downfall, Dick. I shall prepare your funeral plans first thing in the morning. Shaking hands, sealing the deal, and as they both stood up from their seats, Dick suddenly pulled him into one of his famous octopus hugs. In all seriousness, though, I really am sorry, Tim. I should have paid more attention this morning when you were talking. I should have known something was up. You usually are sleeping in your food during breakfast, not talking. Deciding to let that last comment slide, Tim hesitantly hugged his brother back. A Drake has manners, after all. It would be rude to not return a hug that was given by a family member. He scrunched up his nose. Oh, wow, now I sound like the demon brat. Fuck that. I'm now hugging Dick just to spite that devil child. I'll even rub it in his evil little face that I got an octopus hug and he didn't. The warmth from his brother, as well as Dick rubbing circles on Tim's back as they slowly rocked side to side, made him grow tired. Tim held on even as his eyes started closing, not even noticing as he put more and more of his weight onto his brother. The rumbling of Dick's laugh as he tried to step away, it nearly made Tim fall over. He was caught before he fell too far, though, and Dick brought them both back into a hug. Okay, baby bird. Guess you were more tired than we both thought, huh?
Did you want to go to your room and sleep? Tim nodded into Dick's shoulder. All right, then. Do you think that you can walk there, or do you want me to carry you there? Walking, as tired as I am right now, doesn't sound like a good idea. I'd probably trip on the stairs and carry out Jason and Demon Brat's attempts for them. Carrying, though. Carry only if it's piggyback. I'll walk otherwise. Dick gently squeezed him, then plopped him down onto the chair. After another laugh came from Dick after Tim sank deep into the chair and didn't move from his ragdoll position. Wow, baby bird, you can't make this easy on me. Hup, hup. I need you to sit up so that you can get ready for the piggyback ride that you wanted. Tim made a questioning noise. Oh yeah, let me just... He sat up straight and blearily opened his eyes to see Dick crouching, looking over his shoulder, and with his back towards Tim. Seeing an opportunity to mess with his older brother, Tim flung himself so he landed heavily on Dick's back. Then the surprised oof and the following stumble was so worth the equivalent of running straight into a brick wall. Great, now I'm gonna bruise. What the fuck, Richard? The very patient and benevolent man only grumbled as he shifted Tim into a better holding position. You love your little brothers. You love your little brothers. You love your little... Tim made an executive decision to gracefully reward Dick for being a good steed before he bucked Tim off. So he brought his arms around to hug Dick around the neck and propped his head on the shoulder. Jason once told Tim about how he used to pander to Dick's bleeding heart to get what he wanted as a kid. So Tim appealing to the bleeding heart was as simple as him just being logical and not wanting to enjoy his brother's comforting touch. So Tim murmured to him, We all love our big brother, just as much as he loves us. Might not seem like it, but we do. Dick froze and made a choked-up sound and turned his head to peek at Tim. He's a bit of an idiot, but all of us love him for it because he's our idiot. Our big brother always looks out for all of us and is there when we need him. You're an amazing older brother, Dick. The man's eyes were misty and his lips trembled, but he stayed still and strong. Mission complete. Tim was satisfied with the possibility of being thrown off of Dick's shoulders gone. He slumped against Dick and slipped into a light doze. Tim was aware enough to notice that he was moving to a smooth rocking motion. At some point, they stopped and talking came from somewhere, and he felt Dick answer with something, then quietly laugh. That they were moving with a gentle swaying again, up some stairs, then some time later, Tim felt himself being laid down. Nap sounds good. Nap. Right, I'm taking a nap before going with Duke. No alarm, though. Can't miss it. Dick, 2 hours awake, please. I'm gonna hunt and eat moth with Duke and Danny. To make sure he knew Dick heard him, Tim grabbed his sweater shirt sleeve. A soft chuckle came from Duke as he patted Tim's shoulder. Don't worry, baby bird. Duke told me about it when I was carrying you to your bed. I'll wake you up in time, don't worry. Do you want me to set your phone alarm or have me wake you up? Tim huffed at that. When? I don't remember Duke being with us. Where even is my phone? Dick's here, though. You stay here. Alarm clock, don't walk away. Cackling made Tim open his eyes and glare at Dick, the dick. Alarm clocks don't make noise until it's alarm time. Dick only smiled down at him and shook his head as he ruffled Tim's hair. You're a riot when you're tired, Tim. Never change, baby bird. Here, let me pull up a chair at least so I won't have to stand for 2 hours. Dick wiggled his arms that Tim was still holding on the sleeve of. Oh, yeah, you can sit. Blinking at his fingers, he slowly pried them off and let his arms fall onto the bed. The next blink had Dick appearing, sitting in a chair, humming a song that Tim didn't know, and carting his fingers through Tim's hair. Pleased that Dick was taking his job as an alarm clock seriously, Tim settled into the bed properly, wrapping the blankets around him, and fell asleep. End notes. Tim, side-eye. Bombastic side-eye. Criminal offensive side-eye. Also, Tim, don't look at me or I'll cry and it'll be your fault. Dick, is this a bonding moment? Tim, I've learned this emotionally manipulative trick a while ago. Want to see it in action? Also, Tim, can you please watch over me as I sleep? I love you so much. Also, Dick, wake up, moth eater. You gotta eat moths, fucking weirdo. Sleeping, whiplash time. Smiling emoji. Me, sweating and doing intensive thinking. How many spelling errors is too much? Should I do this on my phone? No, autocorrect is a gatekeeper for terrible texting. Dick, manual typing is it. Here's what Dick texted. His new big brother. His name's Danny. Did Bruce not tell you about him either? Wait, are you stalking us again? Timmers, we've talked about this. I know you're seeing the receipts are on Tim. I know you're seeing this. The receipts are on Tim. Dookie Bear agrees with me on the stalking thing. We're planning an intervention right now. At least respond if you're going to lurk. Autocorrect, lurk. Sorry, Bruce stopped. Randomly. Dick only has autocorrect working for nicknames. LMAO. There has been comments asking about timelines, so here's a vague outline of what's all happened in the timeline so far. 4:30. Danny left with Bruce and kids. 4:40. Left the building. Tim saw them chillin' and texted Dick. 4:50. Tim is back in the building. 5:05. Tim exits building and leaves, meeting Danny's tour group in process. 5:10. Bruce plus kids plus Danny arrive at the manor. Tim has gotten more coffee and back on Finger Ave. 5:15. Jason and Danny talking. 5:20. Dick interrupts, then Duke. 5:25. Tim arrives and goes to the kitchen. 5:30. Tim and Danny talk. 5:50. Duke calls them to dinner. 6. Tim falls asleep while eating. 6:13. Tim wakes up. 6:20. Tim goes to the spare office to find a DNA sample and watch footage. 6:35. Tim finds out that Danny really was only kidnapped. 6:40. Tim says, "Oh no." Anyways. 6:50. Dick and Tim fool around. 7. Brotherly hug of brotherhood. 7:05. Brotherly piggyback ride of brotherhood. 7:10. Tim doesn't English, falls asleep under Big Brother's watch. Also, Tumblr post that started all of this. And that was part 4, chapter 4 of It's a Reflex, a DPXTC podfic written by Coffee Loving Hermit and read by Summer Audio. This one was really long, but really fun to record. By the way, apologies for any background noise. My siblings, not my kids, I almost said my kids. My siblings have their friends over, so it's like really loud and chaotic out there right now. Tim needs sleep desperately. Also, next chapter, they're going cryptid hunting. Woo! It's gonna be so fun. They're gonna love it. It's gonna be amazing. We only have, 2 more chapters, I think. But it's like, this is a really fun one. I really loved it. It's just the Danny being, no, we have 3 more chapters, but the Danny being, like, totally unknowing and totally describing, like, he, to himself, is describing Vlad, but then to everybody else, it just sounds like he's describing Bruce, and it's so funny, because, like, Vlad sucks. Vlad is horrible, and Bruce is, like, decent sometimes, and he's good other times, periodically. But I feel like they're all so tired, and none of them, like, it's just an echo chamber of, like, misunderstandings and confusions, and it is so funny and amazing, and I love it, and it's just such a fun fic, and it's so good. Also, today is the next day from when I recorded the first part. I had to take a break, like, halfway through, because my voice was, like, terrible. I'm starting to lose my voice. It's so sad. But one of my friends is sick, so she has it harder than me. But yeah, so it's really fun. We're having, like, chillin'. We love it. I can't wait to, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna record the next part right after I record the next part to press hard to subscribe, just because I am on a roll. I literally only had to take, like, a few pauses here and there. Like, I didn't really have to take a break a bunch, like, a whole bunch, which I'm really proud about. Like, slay. But yeah, so I think that's about it. I make sure to go kudos the author and check out the Tumblr link. It is, or I can't remember if it was Tumblr or Twitter, but I looked at it. It was so funny. I loved it. And make sure to go give kudos to the author. Make sure to drink water, because I suck at that. Monkey do, monkey see, but we aren't monkeys, so we better, like, do as I say, not as I do, okay? I'm gonna eat my spaghetti, so I hope you all enjoy. I hope you all enjoyed, and have a wonderful day. Bye!